You're half awake, thumb hovering over your bank app, rent cleared. Then a tiny charge hits, something you forgot you even subscribed to, and your balance drops under that invisible line where money stops being money and turns into a threat. Not a big threat, just enough to make your stomach tighten. Because you know what comes next. A timing problem, an overdraft, a late fee, a card swipe that mysteriously declines at the worst moment. And if you're sitting there thinking, why does saving my first $1,000 feel impossible? It's not just you being dramatic. According to the Federal Reserve's 2024 Household Well-Being Report, 63% of adults said they'd cover a $400 emergency using cash or its equivalent, which means more than a third of people are one small surprise away from the fee and debt carousel. That's the stake. Ignore it, and every random expense turns into interest, penalties, and panic decisions you don't even like making. Fix it, and something weird happens. The next $10,000 stops sounding like a joke, because your life finally stops tackling you every month. My name is Joe, and I'm obsessed with how money actually works in real life. Not the perfect spreadsheet version, the version where your car makes a sound you can feel in your chest, and suddenly your whole plan for the month changes. And I want to show you why there's one invisible line where money flips from panic to control, why your first $1,000 isn't about getting rich, why most budget advice fails because it ignores timing, and why, even if you save it, your brain might try to spend it the second it exists. Because once you understand those four things, you stop blaming yourself. And you start winning. All right, let's talk about the zero line. You know what I mean by zero, right? Not literally $0. I mean living close enough to zero that the margin doesn't feel real. You can have a paycheck. You can even have a decent paycheck. But if your bills are stacked like dominoes and your account is always hovering in that danger zone, you're basically driving with the gas light on every day and pretending it's fine. At zero, money is not a tool, it's a tripwire. Every decision has an emotional price tag attached to it. Not because you're weak, because your brain knows one small mistake can start a chain reaction. You buy groceries, but you're not thinking about groceries. You're thinking, if one more charge hits before payday, I'm done. You get an invite to dinner, and you don't even enjoy the dinner because your brain is calculating whether your card will clear. And the worst part is how quiet the shame gets. You don't tell people, you just say you're busy, you forget to respond. You act like you're fine. Meanwhile, you're carrying around this constant low-grade stress that makes saving feel like trying to carry water in your hands. You make progress and then slip, gone. And if you've ever thought, maybe I'm just bad with money, listen to me. You think the first $1,000 is about being good with money, but there's a catch. At zero, your life charges you extra for every tiny mistake. That's the villain, the zero buffer system. It trains you to feel like you're failing when you're actually just exposed. So, if zero is the real enemy, why does it feel like a character flaw? Because the punishment shows up as little stuff. Not a dramatic disaster. Little stuff, the kind of stuff nobody writes movies about. Which brings us to the hidden tax you're paying. When people talk about being broke, they usually talk about income, how much you make, how many hours you work. But living near zero doesn't just mean you have less money. It means everything costs more, not in the store, in the system. Overdraft fees, late fees, interest, convenience charges, the replacement cost when you can't buy in bulk, so you pay more per unit, the extra delivery fee because you can't afford the time to shop around. And the reason this feels so personal is because the system makes it look like you made a dumb choice, like you forgot a bill, like you should have kept more in checking, like you should have known your paycheck would hit after the auto payment, not before. But those are timing traps. And the closer you live to zero, the more likely you are to step in them. Here's a number that should make you mad. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau reported that banks collected $5.83 billion in overdraft and NSF fee revenue in 2023 billions from the exact people who have the least room for error. And yeah, some banks have reduced fees, some have changed policies, great, but the machine is still there, and it still bites when your balance is low. Bankrate's 2025 survey found the average overdraft fee is $26.77. That's not oops, that's real money. Dinner for two, a chunk of groceries, a utility bill. Now stack that on top of late fees. One slip, $32. And that $32 isn't just annoying. It steals oxygen from the rest of your month. Late fees look like a one-time slap, but there's a catch. They quietly steal the exact dollars you needed to stop the next emergency. That's why it feels like you can't get ahead. because you're not just trying to save, you're trying to save while a vacuum is running in the background. And I can already hear the comment section. Joe, I get it, but I literally don't have anything left after bills. If that's you, don't write an essay. Just comment the one bill or fee that hits at the worst time, like rent before payday, insurance mid-month, overdraft. I want to see how similar everyone's timing traps are. If you're hearing this and thinking that, that's fair. I'm not going to pretend you can magically create money, because even a small leak turns into a flood over a year, and it gets worse, because the timing of bills is built to ambush you. This is the part nobody wants to admit, because it makes budgeting feel useless. But it also explains why you're not crazy. Income often arrives in neat chunks. Expenses arrive in spikes. Your paycheck is smooth, your life is lumpy, rent, insurance, phone, utilities, car registration, school fees, a dentist copay you didn't plan for, a prescription, a birthday you forgot, a tire that suddenly looks wrong. And the spikes don't care that you made a budget. The spikes show up when they show up. That's why you can look at your numbers and go, okay, this should work, and then somehow it doesn't. Because your spreadsheet doesn't feel the calendar. Real example. You get paid every other Friday. Rent is due on the 1st. Your car insurance hits the 2nd week. Your phone bill hits the 3rd. And your utilities are like a surprise bag. So, you try to save. You transfer $50. You feel proud. Then rent clears, insurance hits, and suddenly that $50 is not savings. It's the only thing between me and fees. And then you touch it, because of course you do. Now, layer in the fact that a lot of people don't even have steady income. A J.P. Morgan Chase Institute report found that households with the median level of volatility experienced about a 36% change in income from month to month. That's huge. That's not, I'm bad at budgeting. That's my paycheck shape changes. So when someone tells you, just do a simple monthly plan, you're sitting there like, with what month? And this is exactly why timing matters more than willpower at the beginning. A budget can look perfect on a spreadsheet, but there's a catch. Your bills don't arrive smoothly. They arrive like potholes. That's the truth. Potholes. You can be driving carefully and still blow a tire if the road is built like that. So, okay, we've got the system. We've got the calendar. Now we have to talk about the uncomfortable part, your brain. Because even when the math is simple, saving feels like a fight. And it's not a fight you asked for. When you're stressed, your brain starts looking for relief the way a thirsty person looks for water. And modern life is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet of instant relief. A delivery app, a small treat, a new gadget, a little online cart you don't need. Anything that makes your body loosen up for 10 minutes. Saving does the opposite. Saving is saying no to relief today, for a version of you in the future. And your brain is not impressed by future you. Behavioral economists call this present bias. Your brain weights the now more than the later. It's not a moral failing. It's a wiring issue. You're tired. You had a long week. You open your banking app and you see you have $73 more than you expected. And instantly you feel it, that tug. Not to build a buffer, to exhale, to make the stress stop buzzing. And spending feels like treating yourself. But there's a catch. Half the time you're not buying a thing, you're buying relief. That's why the first $1,000 feels heavier than the next $10,000. Because the first $1,000 is not just money. It's a new behavior, a new identity, a new emotional habit. And when you're living close to zero, the stress is louder. So the urge for relief is louder. Which brings us to the part I want you to really see clearly. People talk about interest like it only matters when you invest. But there's a catch. Interest is already in your life, just pointed the wrong direction. Quick math. Bankrate says the average overdraft fee is $26.77. If you get hit with just 2 overdrafts in a month, maybe a bill hits early, maybe your paycheck hits late, that's about $53.54. Do that for a year? That's about $642.48. And what's brutal is what $642 could have been. It could have been over half of your first $1,000. Just gone. As a penalty for having bad timing. Quick math. The Federal Reserve's data shows commercial bank credit card interest rates around 21.39% in August 2025. Let's say a $600 car-related expense lands, and the only option is a card, and you can't pay it off by the due date. At roughly 21% a year, if you carry that balance, you're paying interest in the background while you're trying to climb out. Even if you're paying it down, the meter is running the whole time. That's why it feels unfair, because it is, in a very literal way. You're paying extra to be broke. Quick math, The CFPB's typical late fee number is about $32. Let's say you get 2 late fees in a year. That doesn't sound wild. That's $64. But $64 isn't just $64. When you're near zero, $64 is the difference between staying positive and getting hit with another fee. Fee chains are real, and that's the point. One fee isn't the story. The chain is the story. So now we can pay off one of those loops I opened earlier. The first $1,000 isn't for wealth. It's to stop paying a tax you didn't know you were paying. The first $1,000 has a job, a very specific job. It's a shock absorber. It's not there to make you rich. It's there to keep you from being forced into the worst options. It's there so a surprise doesn't instantly become debt. It's there so one timing mistake doesn't trigger 3 fees. It's there so you don't have to make a panicked decision at 11:48 p.m. because something is due at midnight. And if you're thinking, Joe, $1,000 is nothing. One car repair eats that. You're right. It's not a fortress. It's a door. It gets you out of the room where the system can hit you for every little stumble. And the data backs up how rare real breathing room is. In the Federal Reserve's 2025 report, covering its 2024 survey, 55% of adults said they'd set aside money to cover 3 months of expenses in a rainy day fund, which means 45% said they don't. That's almost half the country walking around without the kind of buffer that makes life quieter. So, no, $1,000 is not the finish line. It's the moment you stop living on the edge of the fee cliff. Now, I can hear another objection. Okay, but if I have debt, shouldn't I throw every spare dollar at that first? If you have high interest debt, it makes sense to want it gone. I get it. But here's the problem with going full debt only while you're at zero. You're vulnerable. And vulnerability creates new debt. You pay aggressively, you feel proud, then a surprise hits. And now you're right back on the card, right back paying interest, right back stressed. So for a lot of people, the order that works in real life is get a small buffer first, enough to stop the bleeding, then attack the debt harder because you're not constantly getting reset. It's just a realistic pattern. Stability makes progress possible, which brings us to the part where we stop talking about theory and start talking about a method that doesn't require superhero willpower, because willpower is unreliable, especially when you're tired. Quick thing before we get into it. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not personal financial advice. I'm sharing education and entertainment based on research and what I've seen in real life. If you're making a big money decision, talk to a qualified professional who can look at your specific situation. So here's the simple framework I want you to steal. 3 buckets: stabilize, buffer, build. Stabilize means you stop the cheap stuff from turning expensive. You patch the obvious leaks. Buffer means you build the first $1,000 with a system that respects timing. Build means you start stacking toward $10,000 with consistency, because now your life isn't constantly wiping you out. Let's make it practical. Stabilize first. This is the stuff people skip because it's not glamorous, but it matters. If you're getting overdrafted, fix the overdraft trap. That can mean opting out of overdraft coverage on debit card purchases, so the transaction declines instead of going through with a fee. It can mean setting low balance alerts so you see danger coming before it happens. It can mean moving auto pay dates to right after payday when possible. Even one small change can stop the system from taking extra. Quick math. If you prevent just one overdraft fee a month, about $26.77, that's about $321 a year you didn't hand over. That's not motivation, that's mechanics. Now, the buffer step. This is where timing matters more than budgeting. Instead of asking, how much can I save this month? Ask, where can I place saving so it doesn't get run over by bills? You want your savings move to happen right after income hits, before your money gets assigned to everything else. And if your income is inconsistent, don't make a neat monthly promise you can't keep. Make a rule. Example rule. Every time money arrives, a small percentage or a fixed small amount gets moved immediately, even if it's $10, even if it's $20. The size matters less than the automatic consistency, and you don't have to track every dollar to do this. The trick is a bill calendar, not a budget. A calendar. Write down the due dates, all of them. Put them on one page and look for clusters. Because once you see the clusters, you can stop pretending your month is smooth. Then you build a tiny bill buffer inside your checking account, just enough so a bill cluster doesn't knock you negative. Then you build the $1,000 buffer in a separate place. And yes, separate matters. We'll get there. Now, right here is where people mess up. They hear cut expenses and they do it first. They cancel everything, they try to live on fumes, they feel miserable, and then one surprise shows up and eats the whole sacrifice. Cutting expenses sounds like the obvious move, but there's a catch. If you don't fix the bleeding points first, every cut just gets eaten by the next surprise. Sequence matters. Patch leaks, then save, because saving into a leaky bucket is a morale killer. Okay, now the build step, the part everyone wants to skip to. Once you have the buffer, saving gets easier for a reason that has nothing to do with becoming a better person. It gets easier because your life stops taxing you for being close to zero. You get fewer fees. You rely less on credit for surprises. You panic buy less because you're not constantly trying to calm your nervous system with a purchase. That's the invisible line I teased earlier. Money stops being panic and starts being control. But we still need to deal with the final loop. Even if you save it, your brain might try to spend it the moment it exists. This is where people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They finally hit $1,000, they feel proud, and they keep it in the same checking account they use for life. Same debit card, same app, same instant transfer button. So, on a bad week, an argument, a stressful day, a couple of small surprises, it's right there. Easy reach money turns into permission. And then you wake up a month later and you're back to $112, telling yourself the whole thing was pointless. That's not because you're weak. That's because the system made your buffer feel like spending money. So you need friction. You need guardrails. You need to make it slightly annoying to touch the buffer. That can look like a separate savings account without a debit card attached, a bank that takes a day to transfer, a nickname on the account that says buffer, not for normal life. A personal rule, the buffer is only for true surprises. Not planned bills, and not vibes. Quick math. Remember that 21.39% credit card interest rate. If a $500 surprise hits and you have to put it on a card and you can't pay it off right away, the meter runs. If you pay it from your buffer, the meter doesn't start at all. That is the whole point of the first $1,000. Not returns, not investing, not some fancy trick. Turning off the meter, and that leads to the last catch, the one that keeps the wind from evaporating. Saving the first $1,000 feels like winning, but there's a catch. If you keep it in easy reach money, your future self will spend it during the next bad week. So, here's the payoff to everything we opened earlier, that invisible line. It's real. It's the moment you have enough buffer that timing mistakes stop becoming emergencies. The hidden tax? It shrinks when you stop overdrafting and stop paying penalty fees. The timing problem? It gets manageable when you stop thinking monthly budget and start thinking bill calendar. And the brain problem? It gets quieter when you remove temptation and add friction. Now we can finally answer the big question. Why is saving the first $1,000 harder than saving the next $10,000? Because the first $1,000 is the battle to escape zero. After that, your life stops fighting you so hard. You keep more of your own money. That's the part nobody celebrates. But it's everything. You sleep a little better. You make fewer panic choices. You don't need relief purchases as often because the stress level drops a notch. And consistency becomes possible. That's how people suddenly start saving faster. It's not magic, it's momentum. The first $1,000 isn't about wealth, it's about control. So, let me give you the playbook again. Clean and simple. Patch the obvious leaks so the system stops taking extra. Build the first $1,000 as a shock absorber, not as an investment. Use a bill calendar so timing stops ambushing you. Automate small moves right after income hits, especially if your income is inconsistent. Put the buffer somewhere with friction so it doesn't become spending money. And then, only then, you start stacking toward the next $10,000 with a lot less drama because you're not starting from exposed. You're starting from protected. And if you've been blaming yourself for years, I want you to hear this clearly. The problem wasn't that you didn't care. The problem was that you were trying to build a roof in the rain. The catch was never discipline. It was living at zero. If this video helped you, like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to know what changes after you hit the $10,000 mark and how to keep it, check out this video next.